Hey everybody, welcome to the PixelBlips podcast for February 10th, 2013. I'm Andy Ryan. My hometown was destroyed by the evil army. Next to me is the world's foremost Chocobo inbreeder, Dave DeWert. Dave, we love JRPGs.
Yes, we do.
You and I both. We grew up in a salient time known as the 1990s in which JRPGs hit their stride.
Yeah, and they've kind of fell over and have never gotten back up. As far as like the quantity that you can get for each system.
I've been, this past week, I've been thinking a lot about like JRPGs, like the current state of them. And it's really kind of fallen back to kind of the early 90s Super Nintendo era, where you have like the big standouts come over and everything, but there's a lot of stuff that's unreleased.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that stays in Japan. And, you know, I am an eternal optimist, and I like to think that we are just on the cusp of whatever the next JRPG renaissance. We're only a few years away from the next Final Fantasy VII.
I hope.
Well, and if we're not, like there's still plenty of stuff coming over. It's still good. So what we're doing this week is our 5 favorite JRPGs with a little bit of fudging.
A little bit more.
But basically, you know, looking at this list, all of these games are old-ish. One of the honorable mentions, Persona 4, is the newest game on the list, and that's just because it's amazing.
And it got re-released for the Vita. It originally came out on the PS2.
Yeah,
right?
so on the PS2, it's 2008, I believe, so it's a few years old. But Persona 4 is just a genius game. But the next honorable mention down the list is the Xenosaga series. Mm-hmm. And Xenosaga is on the honorable mention list because it's so huge.
It is a massive
over 3 separate PlayStation 2 games. The only other games I can think of that do that are the Dot Hack series.
Yeah, because there's like 4 of them.
I don't think there's anyone on this planet that would say that the amount of content, story content, in Dot Hack is equal to what is in Xenosaga.
Yeah. No.
I mean, Xenosaga is the king of the 30-minute cutscene. Put your controller
down, get you a snack.
Grab a Coca-Cola.
It's time for some popcorn.
So another honorable mention is one of my personal favorites, Breath of Fire 4. It's not the best Breath of Fire game. Having played Breath of Fire 3, I would say Breath of Fire 3 on the PlayStation 1 is the best. But Breath of Fire 4, for me, is probably the most fun. And it looks great. Even today, I still have the online PSN version of it, and it still looks wonderful.
Oh.
Unlike some of the other games on this list, which have not aged well.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be fair, sprites will age better than polygons ever will.
Yeah, well, and Breath of Fire 4 and Breath of Fire 3 are... Breath of Fire 3 was the start of kind of a polygon...
Like a hybridization.
Sprite hybrid. And then Breath of Fire 4, like, it does it really well.
Yeah.
So those are our 3 honorable mentions. And the only reason, like, each one of those honorable mentions could have been number 5.
It could have been, yeah. Very easily they could have been. They're great games. We're not saying that they're bad or anything, but...
games you should definitely play.
Yeah. If you're a fan of JRPGs, you should check these 3 games out. Or those 3 games out.
And I'm super surprised there hasn't been an HD re-release of Xenosaga.
That'd be cool.
Like Xenosaga all on one Blu-ray, I think it would be great.
That would be a great way for someone to lose their life. Just to sit and play Xenosaga on one, just without having to ever get up to change discs.
And Xenosaga, one of the standout reasons is it's so anime.
Mm-hmm. It's totally anime.
It is so anime. Like even right now I'm watching Van Dread on Netflix, and it reminds me of, stuff like this looks like in Xenosaga.
Yeah.
So anyway, any of these games could have been number 5, but number 5 is Lunar, the Silver Star. Yeah. In any of its incarnations.
Yeah, all 5, 6 of them, something like that.
There's been a few.
Sega CD,
Sega
PS1.
CD, PS1, Saturn.
There was one for the GBA. There was one for
GBA.
a re-release for the PSP.
PSP, yeah, 5.
Yeah, so.
And I have 4 of those.
Yeah, all you need is the Saturn one.
Yeah, well,
have the collection.
Saturn one only came out in Japan, so.
That's okay. You know the story. You don't need the text to be in English.
I've memorized. So the reason Lunar makes the list where Persona, Breath of Fire, and Xenosaga didn't is one thing that Lunar does that I haven't felt any other JRPG or any other game really do really well is a sense of place and time. And 2 of the characters, Luna and the hero, Alex, both come from the same village as Ramus.
the chunky kid.
The comic relief, and they all dress similarly. There's things in their costumes, in their character sprites that look the same, and that does a good job of cementing like all these people come from the same spot.
They are friends. They've been friends for a very long time. There's a lot of backstory here that you either have to infer or make up yourself.
Yeah, and like all the characters from the Mage Guild all have similar.
Yeah,
dress.
they have like scholarly type robes and flowing like capes and stuff.
And the localization by Working Designs also does a really great job of bringing out the humor and the character of this.
That time.
Yeah, and
because there's a lot of like.
There's a Clinton joke.
Yeah, there's jokes that are very relevant to the time in which it was released.
Yeah. So Lunar does that really well. Like when I think of Lunar, I think of characters, less so than story. Most JRPGs, you think of story as the main driving force. But with Lunar, the characters are so stand out.
Yeah, you want to see what happens with Alex and Ramus and Luna and I can't remember.
Nash. Nash is my favorite one. Getting the haircut.
Poor Nash. Yeah.
But I feel that Lunar 2 Eternal Blue kind of lost this a little bit. But the characters are still really strong. They're just not cemented in a sense of place.
Yeah.
And cultural identity.
So, well, yeah, and you know that was one of the first JRPGs I was ever given.
Yeah.
And I played the hell out of it. I think I beat it in 24 hours, and I was just like, damn, that's it. So
yeah.
Started it right back up.
I mean, the Lunar is very clearly of the age of the Super Nintendo JRPG before middle, what I call the middle Super Nintendo era, the pre-Final Fantasy VI era, where JRPGs, like, you could expect 20 to 25 hours.
Yeah, except it was a Sega CD game.
Well,
yeah.
But
yeah, it was that level of gameplay.
And so, really great. And you should totally, I think it is probably $10, the PSP version for the Vita. And you could do far worse than picking up Lunar.
You could pick it up at a secondhand place for $50, I think is what I saw last weekend.
Yeah, this is the PS1 edition.
The PS1 version, yeah. Or the Sega CD one, if you could find it, good luck.
Yeah, well, the Sega CD one actually, as time has gone on, the Sega CD one is starting to lose its value. Unless it's a complete in-box.
Yeah, but still. It's a great game. You should check it out if you want to ever play a really awesome JRPG.
Yeah, and it is a JRPG to the core.
It is.
I mean, when we talk about JRPGs, we're talking about Japanese-developed role-playing games that have tropes, what I call Dragon Quest-likes. So one of the best one of these...
Speaking of Dragon... Oh, wait, no, that's
not yet. One of the best one of these Dragon Quest-like games, and I always love this one because Chrono Trigger is amazing.
It is. It's very fun.
So in the 90s, you had the two powerhouses. You had Square and you had Enix before they were Square Enix. And Square had its group, Hironobu Sakaguchi, and Enix had its group over here. And Chrono Trigger was the marrying of those two development teams for something very special.
And it was crazy. I love it.
Yeah, and it is very much not a Final Fantasy. As playing it more and more, I feel that it's more akin to a Dragon Quest game.
It is really interesting. Because I've been playing through it very recently, I find that it's kind of funny that you do see a little bit of Final Fantasy in it, and you do see some Dragon Quest, but then it's just like, you know what, screw it, we're gonna take it into like a weird technological cyberpunky kind of way. It goes into the past and the future. You have to fight dinosaurs.
See, that's the one.
And you get that.
Oh, it's so great, and that's the thing I like. And they totally lost this in the sequel, Chrono Cross, which is a good game in its own right, and you should totally play. But Dragon Quest games have a certain setup of you discover a new area, and you then do a large quest
in that
area, and then that moves you on to the next area. Yeah. Whereas Final Fantasy, you kind of just meander around the world map doing your main mission.
And there's side quest stuff you can do.
And then there's side quest stuff. Whereas in a Dragon Quest game, and same thing with Chrono Trigger, you feel like the main quest maybe isn't the biggest thing in the world for you to do.
There's all kinds of stuff to do.
And that's, to me, that is just, it's so great. There's so much content. You know, we always talk about summer games, summer vacation games.
That's what this is.
And just playing it, like you got it. You know, my birthday was at the end of the year, school year, so I would get an RPG basically most years for my birthday, and then just play it all summer. Which is also, this is a very verdant breeding ground for my love of strategy RPGs, because in the 16-bit and 32-bit era, strategy RPGs had a lot more content and meat on their bones than JRPGs.
to a strategy RPG. There's a lot deeper combat mechanics. There was a lot more strategy involved in playing these games, obviously.
Whereas, like, you counter Chrono Trigger, there's not a lot of strategy.
No, it's pretty much just figure out what the mob's weak to and kill it, or
and
figure out
use your what special ability is going to work right. Am I going to focus on Marl? Am I going to focus on Chrono?
Yeah. Or figure out what mob not to attack so you don't instantly get killed.
Yeah.
Because I ran into that a couple days ago. I was like, oh damn, I forgot about the robot.
You
have to kill the bits and all that.
Chrono Trigger is tough at times.
It is tricky and mean, but it is fun.
That's all JRPGs.
Yeah, it is.
There is always I need to go grind.
Wait a minute, I gotta go find a room full of mobs and kill them all.
Yes. So, and I think Chrono Trigger is my one fault to it is it doesn't do the grinding as well as some of its contemporaries.
No, because you wind up running through the same areas over and over again, but you have to leave them. There's no random battle system. It's just, you see the enemies coming, which is great, so if you really want to avoid them, you can. But if you don't want to, then you have to remember, okay, there's a lot of enemies in this area that are my level, so you just go through and do them up. But
like that's the same with Lunar, because Lunar and Chrono Trigger both have enemies on the map. You can see where the enemy is, so you can avoid him. There's no random. Well, there isn't random. There is random battles in Lunar, but there's not in Chrono Trigger.
Only on the world map.
Only on the world map. So you can kind of avoid people, and I feel that hurts the grinding mechanic, which is kind of one of the things I love about JRPGs.
It's just your ability to sit and
constant, math. That if I kill 100 of these guys, I get one more of this point.
I get another level, and I can get I can not necessarily use better weapons and stuff because that level requirements aren't in all JRPGs for items and stuff. But your abilities get stronger, you get more HP, you get more magic points, whatever it's called. So,
MIP.
MIP. Hips and hips.
So the first one of our fudging categories, and this is because the series that these belong to are there's so many incarnations.
There's so many different versions of these games.
So at number 3, we were going to put a Dragon Quest game, or Dragon Warrior. I still call it Dragon Warrior, but but when I sat down to think, I've played most of them.
Yeah.
I played 7. I've played 8. Played 1, 2, 3. I haven't played 4.
Yeah.
I haven't played 5 or 6.
I almost bought Dragon Warrior 1 for the NES yesterday when I was out, but I was like,
it's not as good as you remember it.
No.
I can beat it in a day.
Well,
in like an 8-hour sitting.
Well, yeah, you can beat some of these games real fast if you know exactly what to do, where to go, and all.
No. Like seriously, like grinding. Dragon Warrior's just not. There's not a lot of there. It's kind of like the original Final Fantasy.
Yeah, there's not a lot there. You can do it pretty quick.
So anyway, in thinking of Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior, I thought like the two standouts. Like if I were to say, if someone came to me and said, Andy, I want to play a Dragon Warrior game, I want to play a Dragon Quest game, what would you recommend? And I figured out I would recommend 8, and I would recommend 3.
All right.
They're both set up the same way, and they're both I think the highest selling
of the two,
the most popular or something. And Dragon Quest 3 it really is the model for Dragon Quest 8, and then Dragon Quest 8 takes what's in 3 to the nth degree.
Yeah. Okay.
So Dragon Quest 3 came out on the NES, or as the Famicom.
Yeah.
It also came out on the Game Boy Color. That's where I first experienced it.
I believe it may have also come out on the Super NES in
the
Japan.
Super Fami. Yeah.
The Super Famicom.
Yeah, we didn't get
Japan.
it. We didn't get it. Yeah. And it's on the DS. There's a reversion of it on the DS. So
Okay.
I discovered it first on the Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
And it is one of these games where you open up a new area of the map, go to your new area, get to the town, and the town has a quest, and you do the quest, and you're done. And then that quest opens up another area, and you go to this another, and it's this continual feedback loop. There's a story about you being the descendant of this great dragon slayer, and eventually slaying the great evil dragon, but that's not really the main focus of the story. No. And Dragon Quest 8 is the same way. There's an overarching story of a cursed king, but you go to this village, you solve their problems, you go to the next village, you solve their problems, and eventually you get to the point where you're now tackling the overarching story.
Yeah.
And we've spoken recently, Ni no Kuni is a lot like this as well.
And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but everything that's always drawn me into, at least the last few Dragon Warriors, or Dragon Quest games, is it looks like you're playing Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
and it's kind of funny.
Akira Toriyama's artwork
It's the same thing with
super instinctive.
Yeah, so it's the same thing with like the PS1 version of Chrono Trigger. There's cutscenes and they're all done by that guy.
Akira Toriyama.
They're really nice. And it's like playing Dragon Ball Z, the JRPG.
Yeah, the good example I heard is that when we talk about the two powerhouses of Japanese RPGs, you talk about Square and Enix. Enix had Dragon Quest, Square had Final Fantasy. Square had Yashutoki Amano.
Yeah.
And Enix had Toriyama.
Yeah.
So Toriyama was a manga artist. Amano was a actual paint Renaissance type artist. And that kind of Dragon Quest is more like a manga in the fact that you read an issue.
Yeah.
There's a story, there's an episode, and then you go to the next one.
And that's how the game plays out. This is the episode where you
Yeah.
do the stuff for this town. And then
This time you're in the desert. This time you're in the mountains.
And now you're in the snow. Now you're in the beach. Whatever. Yeah, it's cool. It's
Whereas Amano in Final Fantasy, it plays out like you're watching a movie, like you're watching a.
It does. It has
it's
one
a
giant
it's a
overarching story.
Yeah, it is a coherent experience.
Yeah.
Not that Dragon Quest doesn't have a giant overarching story. It's just it's not really the main meat.
Yeah.
That I really like in that game. So Dragon Quest VIII on the PS2. Hopefully, I imagine there will be a 3DS remake or a Vita remake.
Let's hope.
They wouldn't let that. I don't think they would leave that money on the table. And Dragon Quest III, you can get on your DS. You can get on your Game Boy Color, which also works on your
GBA
Advance
and your
DS.
SP.
Does it work on your DS?
It works on the original first 3 DSs, but then when I think they made the they got rid of the slot for the GBA titles.
Ugh.
So now you just only have the card games and downloadable games.
Write that note to myself when I buy a DS. Don't buy a DSi.
All right.
I know. So you should definitely go and play it. And Dragon Quest is a great starter. I've always felt Dragon Quest. If someone has never played a JRPG before and they go like, I want to play a JRPG, and you go, here's a Dragon Quest game.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of bite-sized, episodic type content. It's easier to digest.
Yeah, and it's not like you. I mean, yes, it's a very long game, but you can play it in 20 to 30 minute chunks and say, I've completed something.
Yeah. And Dragon Quest is it's not really the originator of all this JRPG-ness, but it was the first big one to make an impact, and all of the other ones used Dragon Quest things.
As a model.
Yeah.
Kinda, yeah.
Even though Dragon Quest was inspired by other things. Wizardry, highlight, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Dragon Quest, good series.
Dragon Quest, yes. So whereas Dragon Quest, there's continually new versions of Dragon Quest, there hasn't been a new version of our next story, a new story-driven Phantasy Star.
There is a new Phantasy Star on the horizon, but we don't know if we're going to get it on our Vitas.
I'm sure we are. Anyway, Phantasy Star 4, the end of the millennium.
Yes.
Now, I've played all Phantasy Stars.
I've only played 4. I played a little bit of 2 and 3, but
I think 4 is the best. The other 2 and 3 and 1 all have things that hold them back. I would say if you were to rank them in quality, number 1 is 4.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2 is Phantasy Star 1, then Phantasy Star 2, and then Phantasy Star 3. Generations of Doom. Anyway, so yes, Phantasy Star 4 is an excellent game.
It is
Phantasy Star 4, the end of the millennium.
A great game. I love that game. I almost played through it again recently. When I got my Vita, I sold my PSP, so I need to buy that game and then see if my Vita will play it. Yeah, it's probably one of the first JRPGs I played all the way through on my Genesis.
Maybe. No.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not the first one. It's not the first JRPG I played.
It's the first one I played all the way through on my Genesis.
By the time I met Dave, this is kind of the beginning of Dave and I's friendship, was Phantasy Star 4. And by the time I had met Dave, I had already been a JRPG fan.
Yes, and I was turning into one.
And he kept bringing in the magazines, like, oh, you gotta see Phantasy Star 4. Look how great this is.
I had a strategy guide, and I had it in my backpack all the time, and I was reading it.
So fun. Those great memories.
It was a good game though, and I like the story. I like the way it is presented to you. Is not through I know it's a Genesis game, so it's not like they had
cutscenes.
It's not like they had full-on cutscenes, but it was like a comic book style.
Yeah.
Where it would bring up a panel, and then you'd see the text, and then it would bring up another panel, and you'd see the text at the bottom.
Yeah.
Instead of having just your sprites stand there and talk to each other all the time.
At the same time, Final Fantasy IV at that point, Cecil's Saga, was just sprites talking in a box.
Yeah.
But Phantasy Star was like, they weren't sprites anymore. They were like, this is a 16-bit rendition of the close-up of this guy's face.
Yeah.
And this is a 16-bit rendition of these two people talking. And then this is a 16-bit rendition of this character. And it was really, manga, comic book is a great way to describe it.
Yeah, it was like a manga.
They gave you just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of the
whole time though. It was awesome. It was so great. There was the whole time where it was just your sprites and they would turn and look at each other, but you'd still get the close-up of their head whenever they talked. Unless it was like an NPC that didn't matter.
Yeah. And this came out around the same time as Lunar, and Lunar also used this. I think the split is Phantasy Star 4 was originally going to be a Sega CD game, and they decided, no, we're not going to do that. We'll release it on the Genesis. We'll make more money.
Yeah, they would.
So they cut down what was going to be, 16-bit full motion video animated cutscenes like on the Sega CD. Yeah. They cut them down into these little artwork, comic booky things, and I think it actually works better.
Yeah, I like
having played Lunar on the Sega CD, I think it works. Phantasy Star 4 does a better job of conveying its story.
Yeah, it does.
And it's just so good.
Oh,
and
it's so
by the end
awesome.
of it, like it's for me, a lot of things in the 90s, after a certain amount of playing a game, you got tired of the battle theme.
Yeah.
So I would turn on the radio in the background. I cannot hear Champagne Supernova by Oasis without thinking of beating Phantasy Star 4, just because they were both playing at the same time.
Yeah, it is.
And it was one of those moments in your life where everything seems to sync up.
I know what you're talking about.
And there's a big reveal at the end of Phantasy Star 4. There's actually an emotional story, which I hadn't gotten to that point. I think I had beaten Dragon Warrior 1 and 2 by the time I played it. I'd beaten Final Fantasy 1. I didn't have a Super Nintendo, so I hadn't played
any of the SNES games.
So really, JRPGs to me were the mechanics. It wasn't really, the story was there, it was interesting, but it wasn't really the driving force. And Phantasy Star 4 was the first one I remember, like, it's the driving.
There being a big, overarching story that you really care about. It's not
you
something
must save the world, Chaz.
Yeah.
Chaz.
Chaz. He's
so
such
90s.
He's such a noob at the beginning, but then he turns into like this badass by the end, and it's
and the cool like the macro attacks where you would combine like one character's attack plus the other character's attack.
Yeah, we could get the blizzard or
the Grand Cross was my favorite.
Yeah, when I went over and I was helping this is kind of odd. I was helping my sister grind in Phantasy Star 4 because she was at the point where it's like, okay, I've got to do the 3
Sandworms.
No. I was grinding on Sandworms. This is way after that.
Oh.
Where you're on the crystal planet or the whatever it is, where all the crystals are. I don't remember.
The ice planet.
Yeah, something like that.
You
have to go through
bulldozer thing.
The 3 towers.
Yeah.
And I was just standing there grinding through mobs for like hours, just hanging out and BSing. And they're like, "How do you do that? It's a JRPG. That's what you do.
Yeah,
this is how you spend an afternoon playing a JRPG."
This is just the thing, and I think kids younger than us aren't going to get it.
No.
Because they grew up with Final Fantasy VII. Where it's pretty much Final Fantasy VII. You can grind to get extra things
if you want to,
but you don't really have to.
No,
and that's been kind of the prevailing JRPG-ness.
In games like Lunar, where the monsters are scaled off of your main character's level,
you also don't have to grind.
Well, and if you grind, it makes it harder.
Yeah.
So it's do you want to extend the life of the game by grinding more? Which that's not a really good quality of game, but whatever.
Yeah. But once again, like I said, like I like that math sometimes.
Yeah, it is
I
fun.
like just grinding.
It is.
Level up, level up, level up.
You like seeing the level up, and
Bing, bing, da 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 da. Oh, what is that music from?
That's from all the Final Fantasy games. That is all the Final
Fantasy
games.
So clearly, as we've gotten to the top of the list, number 2 was Phantasy Star 4. There's been one series that has been left out.
Kind of on purpose.
Yeah, because it was clearly this was going to be the number 1.
Yeah, it was going to be a Final Fantasy game of some sort, but actually it's two Final Fantasy games.
I am on record saying I do not enjoy Final Fantasy VII.
We talked about this last week. He doesn't like the fact that you can't woo Tifa in all. And
well, you can woo her out. You can woo,
but it doesn't matter. It has no effect.
It doesn't matter.
You could do it, but it doesn't matter.
And I think that's lazy game design.
And it was also,
and I really
it was
also
one of their first big forays into 3D, so they were kind of worried about making all the stuff look right.
Yeah, and it doesn't. It hasn't aged well.
It doesn't look very good. Now the backgrounds still look really well, really nice. Like the static backgrounds that they use for most of the stuff looks great, but the sprites, the overworld sprites still look.
Yeah,
they might as well be sprites.
Yeah.
But the polygons look pretty
low rent.
But it's.
And I've also never liked the character designs now that I think about it. Who's the guy that does the character designs now?
I don't know.
Okay, so it used to be Amano.
Okay.
He used to do all the character designs. And in Final Fantasy VII, they changed it up. And it's leather and belt buckles and spiky hair.
It was
effeminate-looking men and...
Yeah, you say Barrett is effeminate-looking. Come on now.
Well, if a giant African-American guy with a Mr. T mohawk and who's missing a hand is effeminate at all.
They're not all that bright.
Anyway.
But yeah, I see where you're going with Cloud because he's so small, and Sephiroth with the long gray hair,
and the sword that defies physics,
and Vincent. Although Vincent was a badass, you have to admit.
Yeah,
the vampire was a badass.
badass.
So my number one is Final Fantasy VII.
Yes,
in case you.
Yeah, so that's Dave's number one. I have more taste. My number one is Final Fantasy VI. Because even though the victory chime is really instinctive, when I hear one piece of music, I think of Final Fantasy, and that's Terra's theme.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay.
And it's just like...
The overworld theme for 6.
Yeah, and actually now that I think about it, I might be naming... When I talk about the artist that did Final Fantasy, I might be talking about the composer.
Talking about the wrong guy.
Yeah.
But
maybe not. I have to think about that.
There'll be fact checks.
Yeah, but
mini fact checks.
Oh god! I mean that opening, trudging through the snow and like the setting up the world and the Magi and the world of the Magi, all this stuff, and then that da 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 da. I mean, and that look and I didn't play it until the PS1 era because I didn't have a Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
But just that look behind the mechs as they're driving up through the snow towards the mine, it's da 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 da. I mean, that was the start of a movie.
It is. It's totally the intro to a movie because is there text that
there's
scrolls up
no,
too?
there's literally like the credits pop in and out.
Yeah, while you're seeing this intro, and it's really neat. And to be fair, I've only played the first few hours of Final Fantasy VI. I have it on my Vita. I just haven't gotten around to playing it. I also have actually I have 2 physical copies of it. I have the Super Family that he bought me when he was in Japan. Box, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And then I also have the PS1
You will have
version.
no idea how much I paid for that.
I don't think I want to know how much you paid for that.
No, it's not a lot. Like,
really? Would you pay like $8 for it?
No.
You paid like $6, $5, $3 for that? You paid $2.
I went into a Japanese like a Walmart.
Yeah.
Their electronics area, and they had basically just like a bunch of old video games out in little plastic wrappers. And I was flipping through there, and I saw, this is 6. And it was 200 yen, so $2. And I was like, this is a super deal. So I bought it. I bought some other stuff. I went up to the front, and when I got outside, I opened up the little Ziploc bag that it was in, and everything's in there. And I was like,
sweet. Yeah, I
so
mean,
it's $2 for the greatest JRPG ever made.
Assuming you can read Japanese, and you have a Super Famicom.
Oh, you can use them in your normal Famicom. I mean, your just normal Super Nintendo.
I can't use it in my FC Twin. I tried the pegs. It's got the
I can remove the pegs for you.
I know. I just don't want to take it apart.
I've already done
that. But yeah, so he loves Final Fantasy VI. I love Final Fantasy VII. Maybe that's because that was the first Final Fantasy game that I played.
This is kind of the best way that I can say, bar none, 6 is better than 7. Let's compare the villains. Sephiroth and Kefka.
Kefka is pure evil.
Kefka is the best villain in a Final Fantasy VII game. Like, one of the top 3, like, up there with Hans Gruber from Die Hard, like, one of the best villains ever.
Yeah, Kefka's pretty good as a bad guy.
I mean, Sephiroth is hurt because he's been cloned, and he's been led to believe that he's some sort of special person. He's not. And he's this weird alien meteor thing. He's going to destroy the world. Kefka is just evil.
Kefka's just crazy.
Like, why do you do anything, Kefka? I don't know. I'm evil.
Because I feel like doing it.
And that first voice sample, that.
And that's, that right there. It's just goofy.
The crazy clown.
And then there's no voice samples in the next, like, 2 Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
So
it was just like, that's how important Kefka is.
Yeah. I understand.
And that final battle where you, like, start at the bottom of, like, the underworld, and then you slowly move up to, like, Kefka, like, in, like, this weird toga robe thing, and the lights shining through the clouds, and the music is just pounding. It's just like, this is great.
Kefka.
And the story in 6 is amazing. Whereas, like I said, I have problems with the story in 7.
Yes, I know you do.
But in 7's defense, I do like a lot of the spin-offs. I like Crisis Core.
And I don't know. I like the Advent Children movie, but that's a movie that's not a game. So.
Yeah. But so our number 1 Final Fantasy, 7-6.
Yeah.
7-6.
Just not 13.
Yeah. Well, once again, like
13's hit or miss depending on what you want.
People that tell me 13 is the worst Final Fantasy
they played it for 2 hours and took it back.
I really like the story. I like the story in 7. I mean, at 13, I like the characters.
I like the story in 7. You said it. I got it on tape. Yeah, got it on tape. We're gonna check tape.
I'm gonna have to cut that out. But I mean, it's just we're never. I've kind of like reconciled myself to the fact that we're never going to have 6 again. The people that did 6 no longer work at Square.
Yeah.
The new generation has come in, and so you're just not going to get that again. In the same way, the new Die Hard isn't going to be as good as the old Die Hard.
I don't know. Any new Die Hard is definitely better than no Die Hard at all.
It's true, and any new Final Fantasy is definitely better than no Final Fantasy at all.
Yeah, let's just hope 15 is awesome.
Well, I mean, but you know,
We got
8 sucked, 9 rocked. So
Yeah.
I hated 10, 12 was amazing to me. So
And 11 and 14 are online.
yeah, well,
So whatever.
so yes, JRPGs, definitely go play.
If you
Play JRPGs.
If you want an awesome story and something that is going to eat your day.
Yeah.
Like if you've just got like a week solid, you're not doing nothing, you're on vacation, you're just hanging out at the house, go.
Yeah.
That is a good way to kill a week.
Make it one of your 4 in February. I've already gotten 2, maybe 1, depending on how I count them. I already got 2 of my 4 in February done.
See, I haven't even done that. Like,
Yeah.
I started playing Chrono Trigger again, and I'm like, I'm not going to finish this before the end of the month. Unless I take a day or 2 off.
Man, I'm just thinking in my head right now, Terra's theme, and I can just see it in front of me like da 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 da.
Okay, well, bring up some YouTube videos.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. It's on my Vita right now. I'm thinking about like just diving over and playing it. It's so good.
It is good.
Why don't you know?
Because I haven't played it. I haven't had the time to play a JRPG in forever.
That's like someone saying, man, I really liked Half-Life Blue Shift, but I haven't had time to play Half-Life. Anywho.
Blue Shift is quick. Blue Shift is like 6 hours.
Blue Shift
7
is
hours.
good. Anywho, don't forget to spay and neuter your Pokemon. I should actually start saying, don't forget to spay and neuter your familiars as well now that we're playing Ni no Kuni. Go out and play a JRPG. They're a breed that is in remission, that I am hopeful that something happens, something big.
Something cool happens next gen, and we get a lot more of these games.
Yeah, there are great JRPGs out there. There are JRPGs that are on the fringes, action JRPGs like Ys and like Tales of Fantasia, strategy RPGs like Fire Emblem and Dark Wizard and
Tactics.
Final Fantasy Tactics and Shining Force.
And Disgaea.
And oh my god, Sega owns Relic. Maybe we'll see another Dark Wizard. Maybe we'll see another Shining Force. Please.
That'd be awesome. We need more games.